the secret of how Cadbury gets the soft, creamy caramel inside the chocolatey pockets of the caramel bar.
Yes, we know you have it, and my people are prepared to pay 50 million.
Not enough.
75 million for the caramel secret.
Not enough.
100 million, tops.
Sorry.
I'm willing to pay anything.
Anything?
Project procurement is more than just buying things. Purchasing has become quite simple for individuals, whether it be store visits or online shopping. Project procurement is another matter. It is quite impactful to two of the things you are trying to protect as a project manager: time and budget. Procurement takes time, and so you will plan it. Procurement can affect project cost, and so you will conduct it and control it carefully. Incidentally, procurement has risk too, and so all three of these processes should be engaged thoughtfully. The Project Procurement Process Group contains three processes: planning procurement management, conducting procurements, and controlling procurements. Planning your procurement management is about defining what needs to be purchased from outside the project assigned resources and defining the method on how it will be done. This is where you can be creative in procurement. This is where to apply your inspirations and ideas, because after this, it's all papers and forms, baby. Identifying what needs to be procured is going to require you to think a little bit further than just buying materials or software. There are many other purchases a project would make, and so you and your team will think of services that the project will need, like delivery, travel, or office services, those that are not part of the project hosting organization, of course. Materials is a given, so listing them is important too. Professional services can be a procurement consideration too, as certain parts of the work breakdown structure are outside the current skill set and personnel need to be contracted for the project. Basically, anything for which your project needs a budget of real dollars will be part of the procurement planning list. For each item identified, it is necessary to define the method of procurement, like the request for proposal or other RFX-type procurement methods, or something simpler such as placing an order from a predefined supplier whom the organization already has a procurement agreement. As well, you and your team will be planning the timing of the procurement, the failure point for many projects. Failing to consider the time it takes to procure items is often responsible for terrible overruns in both time and cost for the project. The inputs for this process, well, just look at the list, it's huge. And that is because the need to plan the purchase of something can arise from any of the plans you have developed and are developing for the project. The tools and techniques list skills you would use to make any personal purchase, which would require market research, make or buy type thinking. In addition to that, it will help to have a good knowledge of the hosting organization's procurement procedures and policies. The outputs of this process are the plan and a number of supporting documents that support the more sophisticated request for type procurement procedures. We will touch on them later, but they are sometimes referred to as RFX, the R and the F standing for request for, and X being the different types.
I'm just saying, telling the truth is not in the cards right now. I thought you'd be excited to have an acting job.
If it's an acting job, we should get paid.
Yeah, you're gonna get paid in experience.
I want to actually get paid.
All right, what do you want?
$600 for the day, plus overtime if we go over 8 hours. I'll do my own hair and makeup, and I want you to pay for the 6-week intensive acting camp that my mom can't afford.
$50 for the day and a 2-week acting class at the YMCA nearest you.
$500 and a 4-week acting class.
$300 and a 3-week class.
Done.
I would have done it for $500.
I would have done it for the experience.
The contract. It defines the agreement. It brings mutual understanding between parties, sort of defining an interface for two entities with differing goals and objectives to interact in some manner for mutual benefit. Don't worry, this is not turned into a business law course, and we aren't here to scare you with stories about failed contracts. But contracts do involve risk, and that is something we are learning to understand as project managers. Knowing about the different types of contracts that exist will help you manage the risk to your project, especially towards cost, schedule, and yes, scope as well. The fixed price type of contract is an exchange of price for a defined product, service, or result. It requires that the scope is detailed and final, since it is so important to define exactly what is included in that price. With recognition that the fixed price can have some disadvantages, they come with some variations as well. Firm fixed price. This is the vanilla or basic fixed price contract, where the price and delivered goods and services are never subject to change unless the contract is changed by mutual agreement. This favors the buyer as it gives them predictability of costs over time, and the seller is absorbing the risks in delivering the contracted scope. If a seller has a well-defined, predictable product or service, they can comfortably bid on such a contract with lower risk to themselves. Fixed price incentive fee, also known as FPIF. This still has a fixed price ceiling, which is low risk for a buyer, but it sets up incentives for delivering certain things within defined metrics such as cost, schedule, or technical achievements. This covers the buyer for risk due to the ceiling cost, hence it is considered one of the fixed price contracts. The variation could make a contract more attractive though to a seller, delivering something with medium predictability as the risks are rewarded with incentives. Fixed price with economic price adjustments. The passage of time can bring change that can affect all contracts, such as that the agreement can lose its mutual benefit. This type of contract is used when the contract is different countries and deals with different currency exchange and valuations. This type of contract might also be used when involving longer-term contracts and volatile-priced materials or services, like 3 to 5 years, for example. The basis for the cost reimbursable contract is the idea that the cost is whatever the cost turns out to be, and the profits for the seller is the part that is defined. In such a contract, both parties are agreeing to how much the cost is defined, receipted, and paid for, and also how the seller will be paid above that cost. It comes in slightly different forms. Cost plus. It's actual cost plus a percentage of the cost as the seller's profit. Cost plus a fixed fee is the actual cost plus a fixed amount. Cost plus incentive fee is the actual cost plus a fixed amount and an additional incentive for extra performance. Cost plus award fee are the actual costs are small enough that the majority of the fee is based on incentives. I probably don't need to tell you that the cost plus type of contracts are very risky for the buyer. Still, there are real-life situations that such a contract is useful, and the risks are known and strategized for. Which brings us to another scary contract type, time and materials. This type of contract is allowing the seller to deliver the product while the buyer pays for the time spent and an agreed upon rate, and for the materials needed. Materials and expenses billable to the buyer are defined in the contract as well as the hourly or daily rate for services. Then, estimates are given for what will be needed. God, I have trouble even finishing my sentences while defining this type of contract. For this to have any hope of success for the buyer, there has to be one of the most trusting relationships between the buyer and a seller, or a longer relationship of many contracts such that poor behavior on the seller's part could mean termination of the relationship without huge cost as it's confined to a single project. If you use carrot and stick to motivate your sellers, you need a very big stick, and a carrot indeed, to keep the seller in line with such a contract. Other types of contracts can be used, such as an MOU or Memorandum of Understanding, which is not a legal contract, but is a way of moving forward with the expectation of a contract to follow. Service level agreements is the contract that defines the metrics of a service, for example, response times or different levels of urgency of support calls. Staff augmentations, also known as residency, is providing staff with their skill set to be used by the project with no guaranteed outcomes, but rather just lending the skill set. Each type of contract brings with it a certain amount of risk or uncertainty to the buyer and the seller. This matrix you see here is to help understand which are riskier for whom. As you can see, the cost plus a percentage is a very risky proposition for the buyer, as the seller is not motivated to obtain the best possible cost, since that lowers their reward. Same, but a little less so for time and materials, where the vendor may not be motivated to complete the project in a timely manner. The other end of the spectrum are tough contracts to get out of a seller, as they really need to be able to be sure about the requirements of what's being delivered to make sure that they do not have excessive risk. Contract types exist in variety because the variety of relationships that exist between buyers and sellers. Humans have found creative ways to ensure a mutual benefit for a temporary interaction between two entities with different missions.